As everybody knows, Liverpool is a city that has an awful lot of looked after children. We're currently around the 1,500 looked after children. So that means we need a number of foster carers from diverse backgrounds to look after the children that we need need foster care. We need a whole variety of foster carers. We are always going to, there's a national shortage of foster carers, and people will be aware of that. I think they're sort of saying about 11,000 foster carers short across the country. So all local authorities are absolutely sort of like doing their best to recruit foster carers locally to look after our local children, because I think that's one of the things that's really important for us. And I suppose we're such a big local authority, we have a lots of different diverse types of fostering, but we'll come into some of those later on. But I think it's just important to say, you know, 1,500 looked after children is very, very big, and we need people from locality to look after our local children.
Thank you, Paul. And then I was just going to start by introducing Phil. So Phil is a foster carer, but also works with us. So Phil's just going to kind of introduce himself and tell you a bit about his fostering experiences.
Hey everybody, I love this bit because I do like talking, so bear with me. And I've also missing a tooth, and I've had the vaccine in the last 24 hours, so I'm slightly more hyper than usual. 11 years ago, me and my wife, who's that lady in one of those photos laughing because I am so funny, she brought me along to one of these events. You know, it wasn't like on a Zoom then, it was in a council community centre by Sefton Park. We live by Penny Lane. Welcome to my house. She took us along. She said, oh, let's go along and find out about fostering. To cut a long story short, we went through the process. We got approved. We've got 2 birth kids. And I can't sort of point them out very easily, but if you look at the picture at the top where there's you can see 2 kids and a little boy getting hugged. The little boy getting hugged is one of our foster kids. And I've got hundreds of stories. Everyone who fosters has got stories, which again, like it says on the little notice there, they'll make you laugh or cry. And a really recent one, which was just last week, no idea why, but the little boy who lives with us, he's actually been with us 7 years, so quite a long time. He came into our room. So me and my wife were pretty much asleep. It was about 11:45 at night. He came into our room and he sat on this chair that I'm on now. And this might make me a little bit emotional, which is always odd because I'm a fairly sort of standard bloke who doesn't normally cry much, but he just started to talk. And he talked and he talked. He talked for at least an hour. And he talked about things that had been done to him, you know, like abuse, emotional, physical. And I don't know why he chose that night and that time to tell us. But after 7 years, we suddenly found out all this information. And you thought, trying to reflect on it, you go, you know, me and my wife were going, wow, I wonder why he chose then. And maybe something triggered it at school or who knows, but he felt safe enough to tell us these things. And it was really I feel quite proud that he chose to tell us all these things that happened. There's always say that you're crying a little bit, but there's also a laughing moment, because at the end of this 1 hour of stories, he went, and another thing, the people I lived with before, they wouldn't let me watch Pointless. And we're like, what? And he put that right up there. Apparently not being able to watch game shows annoyed him as much as not being fed, not being clothed, being threatened. And we sort of giggled, me and my wife in bed, and then he literally got up and went, that's all I got to say. And he went off and he went back to his own room. And if you do foster, I can't guarantee that you'll have that story, but you will have stories where you will help a kid feel safe. You will help a kid develop and learn about themselves, learn about the world. And it's sometimes very difficult and very challenging. You know, 1 a.m, we got to sleep, but you think we made a difference. We made a difference just by being there. I've got millions of stories and I'm bound to tell you some more later, but I will be told off if I talk too long. So thank you very much for listening to that one. I'll chat later in a bit.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you very much. And now we've got Donna as our another foster carer guest speaker for us. And that kind of quote up there is from when I spoke to Donna previously, which I think is a really good way of helping people thinking about fostering, because Donna very much, she'll tell you, believes that, you know, you've got the skills already, because the value of the routine and the consistency really does make a difference. So I just wanted, Donna, if you'd mind introducing yourself, a bit of background about why you became a foster carer, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, good evening, everybody. I'm Donna. I've been a foster carer for over 10 years now, getting on for 11 years. I'm a single foster carer now. I was when I first went into this journey, and as life experience, unfolds, I've been with partners and then single again. So normal circumstances, normal life, it really doesn't matter. You'll always be supported. I came into this because my background was I had various different jobs, very successful in what I did, but I spent quite a bit of time as a special sergeant for Merseyside Police. And I don't know if you know much about that, but certainly the experience of police officers is we only ever used to deal with children when they were in crisis. So we weren't really interested in the backstory. It was a job, we needed to deal with it, and that's how it was. And then I was very, very lucky enough that in Knowsley we had a project called Katie, which was a joint venture between Merseyside Police and Knowsley Children's Services. And I then sat down and I listened to our young people, and I found out all the different backstories. And you know what? It was never their fault. And it really shifted my belief in what I'd been, sort of worked with before. And I started to see the difference with the children. I started to listen to why children went into foster care. And you know what? I just thought, I can do something here. I can do something. So as life progressed, I ended up applying to be a foster carer, because most of the skills that you've got are just everyday normal skills. You don't have to come from any particular background at all. You don't have to have had any sort of career. Just the fact that you are what I call normal and boring, that will be what stands you in good stead, because a lot of our children have lived in really chaotic lives and their lives are spinning around like this. And then they come to stay with us and our lives are routines, boundaries, we have meal times, and we're pretty boring. And I know I always go on about this, but don't underestimate the power of boring, because it will stand you in such good stead. Things like routines, stability, we'll come on to that a little bit later on, but you've already got the skills, you just don't realise it. And that's what we're about. We're about recognising that everybody is unique, everybody is different. And if that wasn't the case, then I wouldn't still be here after 10 years, because let me tell you, it has been ups and downs, but every step of the way you will be supported. And there are things that you don't even realise that you've perhaps gone through in life, or things that you've taken for granted, but you know what, they're like your badges of honour, because as you get into your fostering journey, every bit of your life experience to this point now will have helped you in some way, shape or form, and you will draw on it. Trust me, you really will. Even if it is 4 o'clock in the morning, you will draw on that experience. It is really rewarding. And one thing I will say is, every single child that comes into foster care has their own story. They're all different. Not every child has had a really horrendous background or been neglected. Children come into foster care for lots of different reasons. So don't always think you're going to be dealing with the worst. It might not be. It could just simply be that mum or dad is just in a position at this point in their life where they need some support themselves, and it's a temporary thing. Children, may well be so supported, so loved, so secure and so cared for, and this is just a temporary thing that needs to happen. Equally, our children come from different backgrounds, and you will always find a different story, but one size never fits all, and we'll come on to that a little bit more further down the line. But yeah, be prepared for the unprepared and the unexpected. That's all I'll say.
That's fab, thank you, Donna. And I think that's probably really useful for people to hear as well, because I assume it's a really daunting thing, kind of taking that step to make that inquiry, and the thoughts maybe are, have I got what it takes? Do I have the skills? So it must be reassuring to hear that, it does take that stability and routine. What would you say of some of the kind of highlights, and we'll kind of touch on the highlights and rewards, and then maybe some of the challenges afterwards, and how, the support you've received in terms of training that's helped you with some of the challenges?
Well, yeah, I would say that when you start on your journey, what happens is you'll receive your mandatory training. And this is all the sort of statutory things that you need. And this will keep you safe, and this will also keep you on track. Now, with the Liverpool City, with your fostering package, you also get your offer of training. And this can be, well, in normal circumstances, this would be face-to-face, but there's a massive bank of resources online. And as you progress, not only will you have your mandatory training, there might be subjects that you would really like to find out about. And I guarantee that Liverpool will have a course there for you. And it will be up to you to dip in and out of your training as and when you want to do it. So if you like training, this will be right up your street, because there's lots there to access as and when you want to. If you're not a great lover of training, as long as you've got your mandatory stuff covered, that's all that you will need to do. And then as your journey progresses and children come to stay with you, they might have different things in their background, or there might be things that, are particular to them. And you just want to find out more so that you can support them more. And that's one of the best things about Liverpool. When I first started looking into fostering sort of 12 years ago, I originally went to a private agency because I will be dead honest and say that, local authority training wasn't the greatest, and the agencies did have the edge. But that completely changed a few years ago, and that's why I changed over after about 5 years from private agency to the council, because the council, certainly Liverpool, got their act together and they accessed a hell of a lot of resources and really put a good package there. So I feel really supported. And you will feel supported, not only with your peer networks, like these are the people possibly that will become your friends and your supporters going forward, but also you have great support from your fostering social workers. So your journey will always be handy held at some point, either by your peers, possibly the people that you see in front of you now, people that you're yet to meet, the support network that you've got, your support workers, and your training. So there's lots of reasons why people come into fostering, but your journey will be supported, and that is a given. That is something which will happen. So you shouldn't be frightened of it. You've got the skills, you just don't know yet. If you're ever hesitant, I would take that 1,000 times, because somebody that questions themselves every step of the way is someone that we want to know about, because that way you're going to come into this absolutely knowing at every step of the way that you're checking in with yourself to check, is this the right thing for me? And we will take that 100%. So whether your journey takes months or years, that's something which is a credit to you, because you won't come into this without absolutely knowing this is what you want to do. And I've been on courses with skills to foster, with foster carers, with potential carers, and at that moment in time it's not been right for them, and they've gone through that course and then they've decided to pause it, and then they'll come back to it. So it's when you're comfortable, but we will be there to support you when you are ready to come to us.
Thank you, Donna. And then maybe just a little bit, kind of, if everyone's wondering what, day to day, what life is like as a foster carer, and how you've seen children change and develop as they've been with you, and also how maybe you said, it's opened lots of doors for you, and how you've changed because of fostering as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, the way it's changed for me is that obviously I came into it with one view of looked after children, and it was a really negative view because of the sort of thing that I did before. But when I became a foster carer, as I say, don't underestimate the boring side to your life, because that boring side of rules, boundaries, stability, that is going to stand you in good stead, because some of our children, meal times have never come. I'll just share with you, I got a little card off my little fella, he's 10, and the first thing on his card the other day was, "Thank you for feeding me." So you get all the other stuff. As long as he's being fed, he was quite happy, and that was real priority to him. But it's little things, it's daft things that really matter the most, things that you might not even think as important. When you have a normal, stable life, that allows children to calm down, and they become supported, they become stable. And then you can have spontaneity. You can have days where you do absolute mad things. You just go out and you've got no plan. And because you are pretty much boring, you can have those spontaneity days where everything is off plan, because you've given them stability and given them an anchor. And once that happens and a child starts to feel really secure and starts to look upon themselves, you see them thrive. And there's nothing better from seeing a child that's not really had great relationships and friendships in school. And then you see them start to make those friendships, and then they have a pride in themselves. The gel starts going on the hair. Or I've had girls in the past that have taken real pride in their appearances that have normally never bothered. They're starting to be quite quirky. You get all the isms coming out, you know, as well as their appearance, the little personalities come out. You know, you have children that might have been really, really, really quiet, and they can come to you and they can be quiet for months. And then all of a sudden you suddenly find that, you know, they're actually, they want to start doing magic tricks. They're quite a joker. You know, so sometimes you have to sit there, and their humour isn't always your humour, and actually there's no punchline to the joke. So do be prepared to quite a few jokes that are just sentences and don't actually have a punchline, but you have to go, oh yeah, that was really funny, because this is all about them now sort of trusting you to be their little people, to come out with their inner character. And you know what, there's nothing more rewarding than that. Seeing them thrive, seeing them getting involved, participating in school. I don't necessarily mean educational. I mean the fact that they're now making friendships. They now talk about friends. They'll now recount the day to you. You now want to get involved in things. You know, children that have never perhaps done activities or after school clubs or been bothered about things, now wanting to take part, not necessarily educationally, but their little personalities coming out. And that's when you start to see the difference that you're making.
I think before we sort of go on to that, I think, you know, for me, this is about, you know, the children we're talking about. It's not looked after children. The children, they're needing this stable, loving, secure environment. And I think, you know, it's echoing some of the things that Donna said. You know, actually, if you're doing all these things, it's amazing. It's not about you need to have these qualifications to become a foster carer. You know, we'll talk about some of the sort of requirements and the like later on, but actually there aren't any. It's not like, you know, it's not like you need these skills. You know, you've all got life skills, so it's not like it's, oh well, it's like driving. You know, I need to have these skills and it's a new skill, or it's not about that at all. I think, you know, the only analogy that I talk about with driving is a bit like when you become an approved foster carer. It's, you know, at that stage you start learning with your training, and you've got your mentors, and there's all these other things, so that we don't expect you to come in and everybody go, wow, you're a foster carer. We expect normal people to come forward and look after our children. And it's about, you know, it's a sense of actually having people who live locally to look after local children, so they look into their needs and they fit in as well. One of the things that I've been a social worker for a long time, and it's about, you know, sometimes when children have had to move further away because we haven't got any local foster carers, they stand out because their accent and all those. So it really is, it's one of those things. We're really, I know we're sort of like hitting home. We need people who are local to Liverpool in order to get the services to look after them. And, you know, sometimes one of the things we do as foster carers is we work with families, and it may be they actually go back to families as well. And that's why having everybody local, they keep the friendships, they keep the schools, that, you know, it's all of those things that we sort of don't take for granted. We expect these things, but actually for looked after children, sometimes they do end up moving, and that's why it's really sort of crucial that we have people who are local. I think because Liverpool has it is a big fostering service, and I think we've got a lot of children. I think because we're a city, we've got a lot of different types of foster carers, and we've got a need for all ages. So, you know, we are talking about children who are babies and toddlers. We've got I'm sorry, just being distracted by I'm sure we'll come back to one or two of the questions. We've got, it says babies and toddlers, single children. I think that we have in Liverpool a significant number of sibling groups that need to be looked after. And it is unusual, but I've seen sibling groups up to 6 or 7, and obviously that's not necessarily going to go into one foster family, but it might be that we do very well in linking up with a number of people who are foster carers, so that they're keeping that sibling relationship together. What we try and do is best possible is to keep children together, because obviously that's where their stability is as well. So it's we are needing people who people who can look after children with some additional needs. Now, we don't say that this is one of the things that people think when you talk about additional needs, whether it's physical or learning needs, is you're thinking, are these children with disabilities? Children with disabilities have their own team that deal with children who have significant disabilities. So we're not talking about people who are necessarily in wheelchairs. We're talking about people who maybe have on the autistic spectrum, but it might be dyslexic. It may be that they've got hearing impairment, but not deaf as well. So it's looking at what were your skills fit in, because we always later on and through this we always talk about a match, because obviously one of the things we're looking at is what your skills are and matching them to the needs of a child, and then that's where we get really good outcomes for you and for the children. And some of that is that, and we've got some of our foster carers who just do short-term work. So respite could be something for a couple of weeks. It could be something to support another foster carer, or it could be something that we had at times where we've had people who've got parents who haven't got any family who live locally or in this country, and they've got no support, and they've ended up being in hospital. So we've had to put in support there. We use the term short-term quite regularly, especially with people who have not fostered before. We use the short term, but actually that can be anything up to 2 years. And during that period of time, that might change as well, because actually what you might do is you might get a child and you're thinking, actually, it was short term, but the needs then it went on longer. And it was right for you. And actually, sometimes we go back to our fostering panel and then review about whether it's short term or long term. Longer term or permanent placements. Now, these are for children who tend to be over the sort of 5 or 6 year old, that they've maybe been in your care for some time and they're not able to go back to parents or wider family, because we have an awful lot of our foster carers are friends and family as well. So today this is about our mainstream, so you haven't got a connection with those children, but we've got a lot of foster carers who have, thankfully, after sort of 12 months, have said that actually, this is right for us and our family, and they've got a plan then for the long term. The children are being placed with them, and it gives the children a lot of stability as well. But we don't do it automatically or straight away, because we don't want to put too much pressure on the children or on you for it to work. We need to make sure it works with you and your wider family as well. And then we've got short breaks, and short breaks is for those children who aren't necessarily looked after children, but they may have additional needs. And what they have in that, normally it's some sort of motor needs, or it could be they're on the ASD, and it's to stop a breakdown within a family. So that's sort of preventative work. And we've only got 8 short breaks carers, so it's not a big sort of provision for us, but we do have an awful lot of other foster carers who are there for either the respite or the long term.
And I was just going to give you an idea of the types of people who can foster, really. And I think people maybe have an assumption that certain things might rule them out. And not everyone can foster, but the things that people think generally aren't true. So Pip is one of our newer foster carers, and she previously thought that being single, she works, she didn't own her own property, maybe barriers, but now she's actually an amazing foster carer to 3 siblings. Her job became more flexible during lockdown, so she's been able to commit to looking after 3 siblings. And she said at the end, just investigate all the options before ruling yourself out. There's different types of fostering to suit different lifestyles. So really, there's a wide range of foster types, and we're looking for a wide range of people. And then the next slide just gives a few examples of some of our foster carers to give you an idea of the diversity, really. So who can foster? So we've got Linda. So Linda's a single foster carer, and she looks after 3 sisters. They were unaccompanied asylum-seeking sisters from Angola, and they came with a love for learning and a love for language, and Linda has exactly the same. And when Paul talks about the match, that's worked really well for them, because they have an interest in the same things, and the girls have been able to do really well at school. because Linda's been involved with supporting them with learning English. Alison is an amazing foster carer. So she's a single foster carer, and she's actually a wheelchair user. She used to work with children and then wasn't able to continue. So still wanted to kind of make a difference and work with children. So she looks after a young girl who was originally on the road to being placed in residential because there was some really challenging behaviours. Alison's done an amazing job. Tony and Vicky. So there's an example of you don't have to have had any experience with fostering at all. You don't have to have your own children, but Tony and Vicky do. And also Tony's mum is a Liverpool foster carer as well. So sometimes you find that people have kind of been around fostering and they're aware of it, and other times people aren't at all. So, you know, either way. And Mina is another one of our foster carers, and we're looking really to increase our diversity of foster carers from all different ethnic backgrounds because of the range of children that we need foster carers for. Chris and Amanda are new foster carers. You may have seen they helped us with our event last month, and we're seeing a lot of younger people come forwards for fostering as well. They both work, but again, because of flexible work lives, they've been able to commit to looking after a teenage boy as well. And then we've got Tony and his wife Debbie isn't in the picture, but they've got their own children. So they're their own children. And I think they also look after a sibling group and a baby as well. So they've got a very busy house, but you can foster with your own children. That's fine too.
During my sort of 10 years, I've had different roles. And actually, one thing we haven't mentioned is I have mentioned I'm a single carer, but you will have a support network. So it won't necessarily be just your partner. I have my family and my friends, and they're approved as my support network, because everybody needs to have a little bit of time to themselves and that flexibility. So you won't be expected, to drop everything. We would like commitment, obviously, but you will need to retain your own sanity, whether that be that you still continue to go to work for your own well-being, but also I need to go out with my friends every now and again just to go and debrief out. And it's perfectly acceptable to pull upon your support network. So we're not expecting you to do this solo with just your partner. You will be part of a network that we will look at. So it may well be that if you are working or you do have a job, that maybe you might need perhaps on a Monday for somebody to drop off, or it might be that your daughter, or it might be that your best friend drops off at school. So there's flexibility there. It's got to be family at the end of the day. It's got to be like a normal working family would be. Whatever the diversity is with your own routines, we will look at that as well. And with regard to with jobs, as a result, many years ago of becoming a foster carer and obviously getting involved with supporting contacts for my child at the time, I actually ended up becoming a contact support worker, which I just did when my child went to school. So fostering can actually lead you up into different areas that you might not have even considered, but the flexibility will be there.
I'm a teacher. My wife was working for the council when we first started fostering, so I can do a lot of school holidays. My wife has a family-friendly policy, so she could come and go a little bit within her job working for the council. Our birth kids were 6 and 8 when we started, and after a couple of years, got a phone call from a social worker saying, got a little man here, little kid, can you take him? This was a Friday, and he was not in school. And because he was a looked after child, that's the word that you use for these kids, we were able to get him into our own kids' primary school. So on the Monday, literally 2 days later, instead of taking 2 kids to school, we were taking 3. And he wedged into our family. That's the right word, wedged in. He just slotted in. That's the word. He slotted into our family. And because he looked a bit like us, he began to act like us. He began to speak like us. And he's still with us. And one tiny little story, when he went to secondary school, we were saying to him, oh, secondary school. So he'd been with us 4 or 5 years by then. He went, when I go to secondary school, I want Jamie's old bag. Jamie is my birth son. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Why do you want his bag? And he goes, because his bag's cool. And I thought, oh, you're never normally that nice about him, but how normal is it to want to have, I mean, you're not meant to give kids rubbish old gear, but how normal is it to want your big brother's hand-me-downs? Do you know what I mean? I lived in my brother's clothes, because he's older than me, most of my life in the 80s. And this little kid for a while did the same. And he just, the social workers matched the right kid with us. And there was a few things we had to overcome and get sorted, of course there were, but that little kid just became our third kid for us. It suited him, it worked for us, it worked for our lifestyle. And the social workers, they want to match, they want it to work. So whatever your circumstance, they'll try and find a way for it to work.
I think, for me, it is a journey. And we talk about that all the way through, because we don't expect people to come in with all the skills to become a foster carer. You've got to, you learn that. It's your life skills, and it's about, I know Donna said being boring, but it's about being stable and offering those sort of to children. These are just children ultimately, but it's about actually, what does it mean? How do you become a foster carer? I think, and how long is that? Because I think that's what, a lot of people are sort of interested in. And it's about, obviously sometimes people come here and then they make an inquiry to ourselves. They either phone up or email a lot of the time. And we have a bit of an initial chat about, actually, we call that an expression of interest, to see you're interested in what it's like to become a foster carer. And we run about some of the eligibilities of becoming a foster carer, because not everybody can become a foster carer. A lot of the times we're saying, have you got your own room? How would that work out for you and your family? What would it be for those flexibility or your support network and some of those bits? And also it's a two-way process. You've got probably lots of questions for us as well. So we do that, and then we talk about initial visit. Now, initial visit hasn't necessarily been taking place. Obviously it's been virtual, but it's a bit more detail and about what it might be, what provision you might be able to offer, and also what it might be work for us as well. So following that, those are positive, because this is something that you're part of. We're not trying to catch you out when you talk about the assessment and the like. This is about your life. So it's nothing, we're not here to sort of catch you out, but what we are here to do is, and we make no sort of bones about it, we have to complete a very in-depth assessment. But if you think about it, if you've got children, if you are wanting somebody to go, a stranger, to be looking after your child, you want to make sure that we've done all the right checks and that they're safe and they can also match with your children. So including in that will be the statutory checks, so the DBS and the medical, to make sure you're fit enough. We've got a lot of people who have got some health issues that are still foster carers. We've got some people who may have had history on their DBS some time ago that still hasn't precluded them from being a foster carer. It's about, people who've got a background and a history sometimes. Clearly, what we're looking at is making sure there's no offences towards children, and there's nothing there's no barriers from there. We then move on to, or during that period of time, we cover the skills to foster. And again, this is a 3-day preparation training, and it's giving you a flavour of some of the things like safeguarding, talking about recording, talking about some of those things that when we're looking at actually skills and development, and it's trying to give you a flavour, but really it can't be that in depth. It's about, we do have the Children in Care Council there, and we have other foster carers there to give their experiences. And again, it's about what would it be like for you and your family. And that's what we sort of, we look at, how will the impact, and then moving on from there. But we do this sort of concurrently at the moment. We're also then looking at your assessment. So we look at stage 1 and stage 2. So stage 1 is looking at speaking to your references, your support networks, sending off the DBS and the medical, and actually you will be allocated a fostering social worker that would come, and some of it is virtual, some of it's also face-to-face, is looking at your house, so looking at health and safety, any health and safety issues, looking at your background. It's about looking at your history, because everybody has a different sort of background, and that history influences who you are now, and what that means that you might, the things that you take away from your parents. And some of it you may have had some positive experience of parenting and some not so, but actually we can all review and reflect on there. And that assessment then is then presented to our independent fostering panel. Now, in that fostering panel, what they're doing is they make a recommendation about whether you're suitable to be approved or not. From the initial assessment, to the panel, it's sort of, we're talking, we want that to be about 3 months. So from your application form to panel, we want that to be a 3-month process, because everybody sort of say, how long does it take to become a foster carer? Well, some of them is about those visits, and we go at your pace. But really, what we're trying to say is it might be that you're having weekly visits, and some of those are obviously going to be face-to-face, and some of those are going to be on a Zoom or whatever sort of form that works for you as well. And there's about 6 to 8 visits for each sort of assessment to be completed, including speaking to ex-partners if there are, or adult children, and there's a number of people that we have to do. But there's a process, and at the end of it, it's a report. You look at that report, you sign it as agreeing that it's accurate and it does reflect you. And in that, we've teased out then those skills and what that talks about for that match and a preference, because we approve everyone for a 0 to 18. But then we look at, actually, we want this to work for you. So it's about, well, who would work for you and best for you in your household? Would it be 1 child? Would it be 2? Would it be somebody that's under 5? Would it be somebody over 5? And that's something that we tease out within that assessment process. So it's not something that you say, right, here it is, this is what it is, and it's always going to be the same for my preference and what the approval is. That changes throughout your fostering career as well. Because we look about, once you've been to fostering panel, they come along, you be approved, and then hopefully, it won't be long then that we look at an appropriate match for a child, and then we're then working with us, and we'd hope that you'd be then a fully fledged foster carer. But I think that's where your journey sort of, it doesn't stop there. I think that's where, if anything, that's where it flourishes, and that's where it starts to give you those skills. But part of that, and I know we'll go on to some of this in a minute, is some of the training and all those other things. We don't expect you to do it on your own. This is all about, we talk about the team around the child, because clearly nobody could do this on their own. So it is about support work, it is about relying on other foster carers, there's lots of things that we talk about, and I know we'll come on to some of the support, but that it's not just about you, it's about what we can offer you as well. So why foster with us? We have dedicated supervising social workers and fostering social workers. We also have some family support workers who are dedicated to fostering, and they work with carers when they're looking at some strategies, some behaviours, taking children out, talking to them. But also sometimes it's that reassurance that you're doing the right thing, because sometimes who else is going to say that this is right and it's working for you? We do have a number of, when we talk about this support services, we've got the CAM service, we've got an out-of-hours service that are on, we've got direct links with our education. I think one of the things that's really, really useful for us is that our fostering social workers and our children's social workers, when we are back in the office, are all in one room, so that we've got an absolutely great dialogue with them, and we get to know about what those children are and what their needs are, and if there is needs for any support, we can intervene and get and be part of that. I think of a family more about this umbrella around the child and that team around the child. We have independent membership to Foster Talk, so they send out information and resources. It could be for taxation, it could be anything that talks about legislation changes, it could be anything just about actually these are strategies. And I think one of the things that we've sort of tapped into is the virtual world with some of this, especially in lockdown, and it's about just giving even some resources to people being able to print off and colour, do this, or also link them into education provisions. So it's really important that we have not just what we offer as a council. I think we've got a lot to offer with our training, but actually we've got other independent bodies that they come and do some specialist training. I think they're doing a 10-week nurturing course for us as well. So we have competitive skills-based payments. We have an allowance for children for their day-to-day expenses. Most people will be aware that council tax exempt. Now, that's not just if you live in Liverpool. That can be if you live in another local authority, but you're fostering for Liverpool. That it still applies. We have a mileage allowance for when you're taking children to and from, whether it's contact, whether it's school. Those sort of provisions we would be, we're expecting for us as to support you with that. We talk about the up to £500 per child setup fee, because we're not expecting you to sort of furnish your family or furnish your home to do, in preparations. We will, we have got a support and financial support to enable that to happen. And again, the lifestyles membership for all family, because we do try and encourage people to be active. I think one of the things we even though we live in Liverpool, there's a lot of people who haven't been to, you know, whether it's down to the beach or whether it's been out, you know, Otterpool Prom, or it's been anywhere else. There's a lot of the children we deal with haven't had those experiences, and I think that's one of the things that we're really sort of like keen to do is offer those experiences safely, so allowing them to you know, flourish and be safe with you, and it gives them the independence, but also it builds up their resilience as well. We talk about the training development. It has been a bit unusual because we've been in, obviously, in the lockdown, but we've got 98 virtual training courses that we're offering our foster carers. So, you know, it isn't just, you know, this is the thing we talk about when we've got anything to do with development, look at behavioral strategies, you know, fetal alcohol, some of the, you know, some safeguarding, so we've got some of our basic and some very, very good specific training, which is specialist training for foster carers, really, because I think, you know, we can't expect you to come in and know it all. That's certainly not part of it. We are trying to give you, I suppose it's adding those, and it's those tools, so that actually if a situation arose, you know how to respond. Or I mean, one of the things you'd be doing is as well, you're speaking with your fostering social worker. They'll be coming out and seeing you on a monthly basis. They're at the end of the phone. We've got a duty system as well. So if you need it in the daytime, you've got somebody you can speak to all the time. It's about, you know, it is about that we are that umbrella around you as well as the child. It's not just about the child here, you know, we're here to support you and give you those tools. And I think sometimes what happens with people start off and think, you know what, I couldn't look at looking after a teenager. And then actually when you get some of the training to deal with more sort of, you know, not necessarily challenging behavior, but actually having that knowledge of what it's like to care for a slightly older child. We've got people now who said, you know what, I originally came in 0 to 5 and now all I want to do is look after teenagers, because your view changes. And sometimes it's about having those skills, and everybody's got them. It's just about us helping you develop them and looking at the areas of interest, because if you're not interested in it, it's not going to work. And that's why we look at a preference rather than just saying everybody's 0 to 18, we can put any child in. That just isn't going to work. This is about the match and about your skills, and that's what we have that dialogue with you to, I suppose, bring the best out in, and that's what the assessor is. It's a very skilled piece of work when they're doing the assessment, and we're very lucky that we are very fortunate to have very experienced assessors to help people along that journey.
Fabulous, thank you, Paul. And then the final slide I just wanted to share before we get back to the questions is a bit about the community that you'd be joining, really, the fostering community. So obviously the last year has been different to normal, and we've not been able to do everything that we usually do. But you can see that the picture in the top right there is a Christmas party that was an annual tradition in St George's Hall, where we invite all foster carers and children. So there's, you know, 500 plus people all together to have a Christmas party, which is nice. We've also got a holiday caravan that was with some money that was gifted to us, and that's a great place where foster carers can book to go away as a fostering family for some quality time. And then just while we've been in lockdown, we've done some more remote stuff like competitions, regular newsletters, online quizzes, and we're quite well supported with local organisations as well. So Everton in the community, we've had Everton tickets, we've had tickets to the horse show at the arena. So there's that kind of side of it as well that is nice, and will hopefully increase as we come out of lockdown.
Saying about, you know, one of the best things that's just come to mind now that I always remember is a 12-year-old lad, and we just went for a day out to Wales, and we went to Llandudno, and he'd never been in the sea, and we didn't have his trunks or anything, but he just went in late with his little pants all rolled up. Well, do you know what? I had visions of him getting swept off up to the Irish coast somewhere, because he was waist deep by the time I'd finished. But it was that experience of going to the beach. And he'd never been to Crosby or New Brighton or Southport. He'd never been locally. He'd never been anywhere apart from his estate where he lived. And we just went to Wales, and it was one of those, if you want to have a little paddle, shoes and socks off, and it was amazing. One of the best things I'll always remember was seeing his little face, and him sitting there, literally coming home, wrapped in a towel and falling asleep in the back of the car. But they're the types of things. It can be the biggest adventure ever, or it can just be going to your local park and doing something that they've never ever done before.
I think the other thing is, though, I always don't take for granted that children know how to ride a bike, or somebody's sat down and read with them, or, you know, it's sort of done their homework, or even turned up for school. You know, a lot of the time the children, the teachers, you may be the first time that somebody's actually been to school with them, and it might be this like, oh, that's fantastic, somebody's taking, you know, it's amazing how they start taking pride in their appearances. But you know, I used to take a lot of children away on holiday as well and do some of the support, and you'd say to them, right, you can all swim. Yep, can. Jump in the pool and things like that, and 9 times out of 10 you'd have to jump in after one of them, you know. So it is, you know, sometimes we do have to sort of be careful about what our tolerances are and the like, but it absolutely is. And you're thinking, because they don't want to say, no, I can't do this, because they want to say, like, well, everybody else has done this and I know, and it's like a cover story in some respects. No, everything's all right, but actually the you know, we've gone away for a week, and by the end of it you've got people who were petrified of the water. They're swimming, they're doing really, really well. And it's those things, it's about, you know, it's small things to us but massive things to them, and their confidence and their experiences within foster care is so good that, you know, it stays with them, it gives them skills for the rest of their life. And that's why we've got foster carers who've been doing this for 40 years. You know, we always talk about the challenges because I think that would be inappropriate for us to just ignore that. But actually, the rewards always outweigh those challenges. There's no way that we don't talk about this so positively if it was terrible. And I think that we wouldn't be having foster carers still with us all these years later if this wasn't the right thing for a lot of people. And hopefully, some of those people will be you.